All right. To take on the issues coming from River State this evening on the political is a political analyst and a member of River State House, a member of River State NBA, barrister Handsome Kinikanwo, to discuss NBA describes the state of emergency in Rivers as unconstitutional. Good evening, barrister. Thanks for joining us on Signature Evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and good evening to viewers out there.
All right, I was trying to get the pulse of NBA River State chapter. How you feel when you receive the news of the president suspending, well, those were the words we heard, suspending the governor, the deputy governor, and the entire members of the State House of Assembly while announcing a state of emergency. How did the Nigerian Bar Association River State chapter receive that news?
Well, I'll have to say that I am not an executive member of the NBA River State, that is Port Harcourt to be precise. I'm not an executive member, although I belong to a committee, so I do not speak for the NBA Port Harcourt branch. However, the Nigerian Bar Association, led by Mazi Afam Osigwe, who is the president of the NBA, has on behalf of the association made clear statements with regards to the state of emergency declared in Rivers State. Because as a lawyer and as a resident of Rivers State, and the Nigerian citizens who understand the position of the law of the state of emergency, it's something that greeted us with shock. So the NBA is not happy about it. Nigerians are not happy about it. Lovers of democratic governance are not happy about it. And so the mood in River State is quite unfortunate. Of course, around 2 a.m., I read the statement of the NBA president because I couldn't sleep. As someone who understands the law, I couldn't sleep. So when I got the notification on my email, I took my time to read through the statement published by the president of the NBA. That statement is completely in line with the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The law is clear. The president has relied on Section 306 of the Constitution to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State. Nobody is challenging the powers of the president to declare a state of emergency. But the question is, did the president comply with the constitutional provision that he was actually relying on in declaring a state of emergency in Rivers State? And that is where the NBA has issues with that declaration. Section 305 of the Constitution, which the president relied upon, is of course not autochthonous. In other words, that section is subject to other provisions of the Constitution. The Constitution has clearly provided for the establishment of the office of the governor and state houses of assembly across the 36 states of the Federation. The same Constitution has provided for how to remove a governor, as well as how a member of the assembly of a state can lose his seat or membership of the House. And of course, what the president did is not one of them. If you take a stroll to Section 188 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, what it provides for is removal of a governor and deputy governor. The Constitution does not recognize suspension of a governor or the deputy governor. And there are basically four grounds. First is impeachment, where the governor has violated a constitutional provision and the legislative house in a state decides to move against the governor, they can send a notice of impeachment. There are processes for that. The chief judge of the state will have to set up a panel, and if the governor is found wanting, that is it. The governor is impeached and he's gone. Second is resignation, where the governor feels that he's no longer capable of performing his functions, or he's tired, or for whatever reason, he decides to resign his position. That is it. He loses his office as the governor of the state. Thirdly, is where there is incapacitation of the governor. It could be as a result of health ground. The governor leaves. And then lastly, which is the fourth mode of losing your seat as a governor of a state, is by death. If the governor of a state or the deputy dies, that is it. You've lost your seat as the governor of that state. The Constitution does not recognize suspension. And in fact, if you look at Section 306 that the president relied on, you will find out that that section is made subject to other sections of the Constitution. That was why I said the Constitution, the section of the Constitution rather that the governor relied on, is not autonomous. It is subject to the provisions of the Constitution. In fact, that section said, I'm reading from the Constitution right now. It says, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the president may, by instrument published in the official gazette of the government of the Federation, issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in the Federation or any part thereof. Subject to. There is nothing in Section 305 that empowers the president to suspend a sitting governor, the deputy governor, and all elected officials. That is where the MP has issues.
Now that this rule of emergency declared by the president and the various suspension as pronounced, does the governor have, chances, legal chances against this pronouncement?
Of course. Issues like this have been challenged in the past.
Can I give us precedents?
Sorry, yeah, previous administration, not this Tinubu-led administration. Other presidents has actually declared state of emergency.
And they were challenged?
Yes. That of Joshua Dariye in Plateau State was actually, the Supreme Court had an opportunity to make a pronouncement on it. But as a result of the issues that had transpired, of course, it was impeached by the House of Assembly without getting the required numbers that is required by the Constitution. And in 2013, if my memory serves me right, President Goodluck Jonathan also declared state of emergency in 3 states of Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa as a result of the insurgency. Although there have not been any specific pronouncements on this section, there have not been. But there are Supreme Court decisions, numerous, many of them, that shows that in declaring a state of emergency, the president must follow the law as it is. Listen, the Constitution is the highest law of the land. Every other law is rooted on it. Every other law is rooted on it. Every other decision of government is rooted on it. The Constitution is not like every other act of Parliament. And that is why the supremacy of the Constitution has never been challenged. It is supreme. In 2007, Obasanjo, as the president then, purported to have removed Atiku Abubakar as his vice president. Using the security agencies, the man was chased out of Aso Rock and things like that. Atiku Abubakar went to court and challenged it. And the court said, no, you cannot. The same way the governor loses the seat is the same way the president or the vice president or the deputy governor loses the seat, which is the 4 ways I've earlier mentioned. You cannot on your own remove the governor. You cannot. In fact, what President Tinubu has done is an infraction on the Constitution. Section 1, subsection 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, has clearly provided that no part of Nigeria, in fact, let me read, no part of Nigeria can be governed through undemocratic means, no part. And listen, section 1 of the Constitution is the supremacy clause of the Constitution. That is the supremacy clause of the Constitution, and it reads, it says, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, subsection 2 of section 1 right now, it says, the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall not be governed, nor shall any person or group of persons take control of the government of Nigeria or any part thereof, except in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. There is no backing. The president himself has challenged the removal of local government chairmen by governors.
When he was a governor?
Even as a sitting president. This year,
okay,
through his attorney general, who is the chief law officer, they are taking the 36 states governors to court, declaring CTC arrangements illegal. It was based on that all the states in Nigeria had to conduct election within a time frame. The Constitution is clear on these issues. Section 7 of the Constitution guarantees the independence of local government administration, and it says that the local government administration shall be administered by a democratically elected officials, and the states have to make to ensure the existence of this. In the same vein, the Constitution has provided for the leadership of the states by democratically elected officials. There is nothing in the Constitution that empowers the president to rape our Constitution. This is a rape on our Constitution. That is why the NBA is not happy. Lawyers are not happy. Lovers of democracy are not happy. And in fact, do you know that this is a very dangerous precedent? If this is not challenged,
what would have been the right thing for the president to do, going by the trend of things? Ijaw Youth Council already threatened, over this issue, and just the same day as they held their protest, the president announced this declaration of emergency rule in Rivers State. But given the way things are going, what would you have suggested if you were asked before this declaration?
Listen, the truth is this. Even the conditions upon which a state of emergency can be declared is not existence in Rivers State. It's not. See, there are conditions for state of emergency to be declared. We are looking at the act itself right now. Those conditions are not in place. Now listen, let me read the Constitution. Section 305, subsection 3 says, it said the president shall have the power to issue a proclamation of a state of emergency only when A, the federation is at war. We all know that Nigeria is not at war. B, the federation is in imminent danger of invasion or involvement of a state of war. That situation is not in existence in Rivers State or even the federation. There is actual breakdown of law, of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof, to such extent as to require extraordinary measures to restore peace and security. Hello, I'm in Rivers State. What happened a few weeks ago? We are people expressing their fundamental right to freedom of expression. Listen, the Minister of FCT came out and described a particular ethnic group as minority of the minority. If you recall the Rwanda genocide, it was this kind of statements that sparked the genocide in Rwanda between the Hutus and the Tutsis. He just came out and said, no, the president, your minister cannot be making this kind of statements against us. It is inflammatory, it is inciting, remove him. That was a clear expression of their constitutional rights. that did not in any way satisfy the requirements of paragraph C of subsection 3 of section 305. Now, if you go further, this says there is a clear and present danger of an actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof, requiring extraordinary. See, the drafters of these constitutions are not foolish. It has to be a
but do you think the president has other options he would have employed?
Sorry?
Does he have other options he would have employed? I mean, the president.
Of course. Of course. As the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Listen, no state governor, and that is why the governors are clamoring for state police. None of them can direct a commissioner of police to do anything. They take instruction from the Inspector General of Police, who is an appointee of the president. So if there is an explosion somewhere, the governor doesn't have the power to direct anybody. He does not. And that is why there is a clamor for state police. What the president would have done is to charge the IGP and his commissioners and the zonal inspector generals of police, the divisional police officers, to arrest the situation. It is not for you to suspend a sitting governor and other elected officials in a state. That is the point. As we speak today, so many communities in Benue are weeping. So many communities in other parts of Nigeria. In fact, just today, I saw the news of what was happening in Osun State. About 5 persons were killed as a result of herdsmen and farmers clash. The people had to protest to the government.
And then a politician of APC, from APC, actually called on the president to also think in that line. I mean, to declare emergency rule in the state.
Do you now begin to declare state of emergency when there are little issues, pockets of issues like this? In Rivers State, no life has been lost. Everybody, even today, people were going about their normal businesses, even in the midst of this declaration. I went to court today. Unfortunately, the court did not sit. Before I came back to the office, I'm still in the office up until now.
Is there a link, Barrister Handsome? Is there a link to the ongoing in Rivers State?
Of course, those of us who are not interested, our issue is on the legality of what the president has done. But if you begin to look at it from the political aspect, you will see that this is all about the president's re-election bid. If you notice, politicians have been crying out that there is a deliberate attempt to weaken the opposition, and that is true. Look at what is happening with the PDP, the major opposition party. Look at what happened with Labour Party, the party that actually gave Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, an alternative to APC and PDP. Look at what is happening in that party. Look at what is happening with El-Rufai and those who have moved on to SDP. So you can see there is a calculated attempt to weaken the opposition. And of course, Rivers State is not an APC state. It is a PDP state. So if you look at it from the political angle, you will begin to see that all of this is geared towards the re-election of the president. And unfortunately, this is a president who, in 2007, kicked against President Olusegun Obasanjo's declaration of state of emergency in Plateau State. This is the same President Tinubu who, in 2013, kicked against the declaration of state of emergency in Yobe, Adamawa, and Borno State. It is the same president. In fact, today, the president, all that he kicked against before he became the president of Nigeria, he has turned around to do them. In 2011, he was among those that fought the removal of fuel subsidy. But the very first day he took his oath of office, the first thing the president did was to remove subsidy.
Announce the removal of subsidy.
There was no discussion. There was no dialogue. There was no program on ground. There was nothing to show what the ordinary Nigerians will feel. He went ahead and he removed it. Today, inflation is on the rise on a daily basis. You go to the market this week, you get something for 10 naira. You go back the next day, it is no longer 10 naira. It has moved. There is no control. It is sad.
All right, Barrister Handsome, thank you for joining us on Politicals this evening. We appreciate your contribution, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, dear viewer. We will return with more on Politicals this evening.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.